Hello, and welcome back to my channel. So in today's video, I want to talk about pop singers who are more popular overseas or just more popular in a country other than their country of origin or where they got their start or where they initially intended to promote their music. This is a topic that has almost always interested me, and then I'm sure also on the artist's behalf, it's probably something that's unexpected a lot of times and a little bit confusing, but probably very appreciated because it does give them the opportunity to pivot and make whatever art they want to make and still have an audience that is able to consume it and keep them afloat. So let's go ahead and get into the video. In 2009, Kelly Rowland featured on David Guetta's When Love Takes Over. Kelly originally heard the instrumental in 2008 and later convinced Guetta to let her record vocals over it because she was so moved. The dance pop song is euphoric, anthemic, and Kelly's robust vocals are a definite highlight of the track. The song earned her second #1 single in the UK, and out of the 10 countries in which Love Takes Over went #1, 8 were in Europe. Though the song only peaked at number 76 on the Billboard Hot 100, it did top the Hot Dance Airplay and Hot Dance Songs charts. When Love Takes Over popularized Guetta, who's French, in the United States, and it likewise further popularized Kelly in Europe. I actually found a blog post from the summer when Love Takes Over was dominating the charts, claiming that Kelly Rowland had become more popular overseas than Beyoncé. A quote reads, "Former Destiny's Child member Kelly Rowland is no longer living in fear of self-doubt after finding fame and huge success overseas. Kelly, who plays second fiddle to Beyoncé here in the States, is a superstar over in Europe." The post also includes an interview Kelly did with USA Today around that same time. In the interview, she said, "I have a new boost of energy. All the creative juices are flowing, and I'm having so much fun in the studio because I'm making dance records. And I'm working with producers who are just as curious about the sound internationally, too. Here in America, sometimes my music didn't quite work, but overseas it's on top of everybody's chart. I've had more international success than domestic success, and I think that opens my eyes up to music. I mean, I just got back from performing in Lebanon. The success of When Love Takes Over inspired Kelly to lean into dance music for her third album, Here I Am, released in 2011. On the album, she collaborated with David Guetta again for Commander, another all-consuming dance track. Again, Commander was a much bigger hit in the UK than in the US. The song didn't initially perform well in either territory, but eventually reached top 10 on the US Hot Dance Electronic Digital Songs chart. Commander's rise on the UK charts was supported by the release of an EP of remixes, and the single eventually went top 10 on the UK Dance Chart, the official UK Singles Chart, and the UK Download Chart. Commander's success was already a feat in itself, but especially so considering the song was leaked, which could have easily torpedoed interest for it by the time of its release and its success on the charts. Despite Commander being more popular in the UK, overall, Here I Am performed better in the US, where it debuted at #3 on the Hot 200 and at #1 in the top R&B and hip-hop albums chart. In the UK, Here I Am peaked at number 36 on the UK Digital Albums chart, number 56 on the UK Albums chart, and at number 10 on the UK R&B Albums chart. I happened to find a messy post if I do say so myself, on Lipstick Alley, accusing Beyoncé of trying to capitalize off of Kelly's popularity in Europe and the success of Here I Am. Basically, the person claimed that Beyoncé was trying to get Kelly to join her at a Glastonbury performance in 2011. They said, "Beyoncé wants Kelly to perform at Glastonbury with her on Sunday. Kelly is a huge star in Europe, so bringing her out would be front page news, mostly benefiting Beyoncé, who happens to be a non-factor in Europe. Kelly may tour with Beyoncé for the rest of her European tour." While I don't really believe this, it does speak to Kelly's massive popularity in Europe at the time. Interestingly, journalist Jeremy Hellegar claimed that Kelly's version of dance music was less palatable in the US than that of some of her peers, and that was why it wasn't performing as well domestically. Hellegar stated, "The dance music Rowland favors is a bit edgier than the danceable pop that Lady Gaga consistently takes to the top of the charts." This, of course, is a subjective statement, but I did see other sources claim something similar. For example, Idolator saying Motivation, another single from Here I Am, outperformed Commander in the States simply because it was better suited for American taste and radio. A quote from them reads, "Commander was a little too clubby for radio, and the video was widely mocked. Kelly got the message and returned to her signature R&B sound, eventually landing a well-deserved hit with Motivation. She has all but ignored dance music ever since, which is a shame because Commander still goes hard." And aside from that, Kelly hasn't released any albums recently, and it seems like she's been putting out more features and singles. But earlier this summer, she returned briefly to her Eurodance queen roots as she performed at the mighty Hoopla Festival in London. Before becoming one of Latin pop's biggest acts, Becky G first tried to break out in the English language market, primarily in pop and hip hop. She was discovered in the early 2010s from her song covers on YouTube and was soon after signed to RCA and Dr. Luke's label Kemosabe Records. After putting out a few collab singles with artists like will.i.am, Pitbull, and Cody Simpson, Becky released her first solo single, Becky from the Block. The single showcased her rapping and, of course, is inspired by J-Lo's Jenny from the Block. In 2014, the Inglewood native burst on the scene with Shower, a catchy tune about being head over heels in young love. Becky, who had just turned 17 at the time, finally achieved her much-awaited breakthrough song as the single peaked at number 16 on the Hot 100 and would be her highest entry for almost a decade. Shower went on to be certified double platinum by the RIAA and got a second life a couple years ago when it went viral on TikTok. Following Shower, Becky put out a handful of singles, but none were nearly as successful as Shower. A lot of people wrongly think that Becky G just dropped Shower and fell off the face of the earth or just turned to acting instead, but she was able to not only relaunch her career in the Latin market, but also take it to new heights. Also, to be clear, I'm not saying Becky G isn't popular in the US because we obviously have a very, very large Spanish-speaking population and people who enjoy her music who probably don't speak any Spanish at all. But I am saying transitioning into the Latin market also increased her popularity in several Spanish-speaking countries, to the point where Becky G is a more popular mainstream artist in some of those countries than she is here in the States. A lot of Becky's songs perform well on the US Latin charts, but often fail to do as well in the Hot 100. Over at Kemosabe, it apparently had been Dr. Luke's plan to market Becky as a sort of Kesha meets J-Lo type act, but more family-friendly. Becky struggled against this because it meant she had to mostly abandon hip-hop, and the overall image didn't fit with who she felt she was. Eventually, Becky began working with Sony Latin, deciding that she might fare better in the Latin market, and if anything, it would help her be more authentic to herself and her Mexican heritage. In 2016, Becky released Sola, her first Spanish-language single. The tropical reggaeton-inspired single performed best in Chile, peaking at number 6 according to Monitor Latino. In Mexico, the single peaked at number 17. In the US, Sola peaked at number 18 on the Hot Latin Songs chart, 35 on the Latin Airplay chart, and at number 11 on the Latin Pop Airplay chart. Fortunately, Becky transitioned into the Latin market at a time where Latin music, especially reggaeton, was exploding in global popularity. According to Rolling Stone, Ozuna, J Balvin, and Bad Bunny were the 3 artists with the most YouTube views in 2018, all of whom make reggaeton music. YouTube actually played a large part in globalizing Latin music and helping more artists from several countries achieve international success. One of Becky G's most popular songs, Mayores, is a Latin pop collaboration with Bad Bunny, and it also contains some reggaeton and cumbia influences. Billboard listed it at number 6 out of the 20 best Latin songs, and at number 73 on their 100 best songs overall. According to Monitor Latino, which aggregates chart data in several Latin American countries, Mayores went number 1 in Bolivia, Chile, Ecuador, El Salvador, Honduras, Nicaragua, Panama, and Peru. Mayores also went number 1 in Spain and on the US Latin and Rhythm Airplay charts. On the Hot 100, Mayores peaked at number 74. The song's international popularity helped the music video reach 1 billion views less than 6 months after its release, and it's currently one of the 50 most viewed music videos on Vivo. Additionally, Becky G entered the Latin market at a time where women had a stronger foothold in the industry, as artists like Karol G, Anita, and Natty Natasha also rose in popularity. According to BuzzFeed News, in 2018, 3 out of the 10 most viewed music videos on YouTube were by female Latin urban pop artists. Also in 2018, Becky G had another successful smash collaboration with Sin Pijama, her song with Natty Natasha. Becky contacted Natty Natasha to get her on the song, as she claimed the pairing would be a moment in history. She said on Red Table Talk, "I remember someone on my team said, if you think it's such a hit, why would you want to share it? And I said, because hit songs happen every day. I don't want a hit song, I want a moment in history." Sin Pijama is seductive and suggestive, and as the title and lyrics imply, there will be no sleeping done that night and no pajamas worn. While the lyrics are sexy, the song and especially the video toy with male fantasies about what goes on at sleepovers. Some claim that Becky G became more sexual as a direct result of transitioning into the Latin market, but personally I just think it has more to do with the fact that she was an adult at that point and she was a teenager when she was making music in English. Sin Pijama did have quite a moment, going 38 times platinum on the US Latin charts and becoming Becky's second video to reach 1 billion views just a little after a year after Mayores did. The song went top 5 in countries including Argentina, Bolivia, Chile, the Dominican Republic, Honduras, Nicaragua, Peru, and Spain. Again, the single topped the US Latin airplay charts, additionally peaking at number 4 in the Hot Latin Songs chart and at number 70 in the Hot 100. Becky G and Natty Natasha collaborated again in 2021 with the single Rom Pom Pom, which was slightly less successful, but still did go top 10 in several Latin American countries, Romania, and on the US Latin airplay chart, it did go number 1. Becky has said that she feels far less alone being in the Latin market. When still trying to make it as an English language pop act, Becky claims some of her earlier shows were like a ghost town, and she struggled to find community in the industry as a Latina artist. Singing in Spanish to Becky was a way to find her direction in music and reclaim her voice. It was also a way to honor her parents, who are Mexican American like herself, as well as her grandparents, all of whom are from Jalisco, a state in Mexico. Becky has said that she feels more at home in Mexico and within that culture, which is why it was so important for her to improve her Spanish and be able to sing in the language. When she was making music in English, Becky said she was just known as the shower girl, but despite having huge songs like Mayores, Becky said she's still known now as herself rather than the songs eclipsing her. Still, Becky has noted that it was much harder to make a name for herself in the United States with Spanish music. She said, "On the English side, I had all the push in the world as far as radio goes and media goes, but I was making music that I didn't really care for. Now, on the Spanish side, I'm making music that actually means something to me, but the push in the media and everything, that's taken time to really build." Becky didn't release her debut album until 2019's Mala Santa, which of course is a Spanish language album. The album peaked at number 3 on the US Latin Rhythm Albums and Top Latin Albums charts. On the Billboard 200, Mala Santa peaked at number 85. In Spain, the album peaked at number 20. Mala Santa went platinum in Brazil and Mexico, as well as the US, but again, only in regards to the Latin RIAA certifications. Between the release of Mala Santa and her sophomore album, Becky was able to secure 2 more number 1 singles in Mexico. Those are Mala Mia with Anita and Maluma, and Perdiendo la Cabeza, a collaboration between herself, Carlos Rivera, and Pedro Capó. Esquemas, Becky's sophomore album, peaked at number 5 on the Top Latin Albums charts, at number 1 in the Latin Pop Albums charts, and at number 92 on the Billboard 200. For some reason, I couldn't find any concrete data on how the album performed in other countries outside of the United States. I checked Pro Musicae, which is the albums chart for Spain, and didn't see Esquemas listed at all in 2022, so I guess that may mean it didn't chart there. I also couldn't find anything from Mexico or other countries in Latin America. But on a more positive note, last year, Becky was able to top Shower's performance on the Hot 100. Mommy, her collaboration with Karol G, placed 1 spot higher, peaking at number 15. Carly Rae Jepsen is a Canadian artist who many saw for the first time when she competed on Canadian Idol back in 2007. However, most who know her likely know her from her song Call Me Maybe, which is one of the most inescapable songs of 2012 and probably of all time. The single was the year's highest selling and tied Maroon 5's One More Night for 2012's longest running number 1 on the Hot 100. Aside from shooting Carly Rae to mainstream success, Call Me Maybe secured her a record deal with Interscope. That success was followed by Good Time with Owl City, which was released a couple months after Call Me Maybe and eventually peaked at number 8. The 2 singles were followed by Carly's sophomore album Kiss, which debuted at number 6 on the Hot 200, falling to number 20 the following week. In 2015, Carly Rae began promotions for her 3rd album, Emotion. The album's lead single was I Really Like You, and I and others genuinely believe this choice did hurt the album's performance. I Really Like You is a flirty, poppy track about a potential romance, which is pretty much how you could also describe Call Me Maybe. And yes, you could probably describe like millions of songs that way, but critics and consumers alike pointed out that production-wise, I Really Like You and Call Me Maybe sound similar. I Really Like You peaked at number 39 on the Hot 100 and spent 20 weeks on the chart compared to the 50 weeks that Call Me Maybe spent. Emotion debuted at number 16 on the Hot 200, which was considered an underperformance, especially compared to Kiss. Despite its performance, consumers and critics alike considered Emotion to be a strong effort from Carly. The album made it in the top 10 on Time, Rolling Stone, Cosmopolitan, and Stereogum's list of 2015's best albums. In their review, The Guardian called the album near perfect pop, praising the fact that the 80s synth-pop-inspired album felt like a genuine effort and not one that was only intending to repackage nostalgia. But for their glowing review of the intentionality in the production and song selection, they claimed a certain level of identity seemed to be lacking in some of the songs. I did see other reviews similarly claim that some of the lyricism was the only real weak point of Emotion. Despite its commercial underperformance, Emotion still is an exalted pop album and is a cult favorite amongst the 2010s pop projects. It shows way more artistic growth than I Really Like You would lead you to believe, and I think a lot of people thought Emotion would be Kiss Part 2 because the lead single felt like Call Me Maybe Part 2. And though she's never been able to recapture the popularity of Call Me Maybe, several do consider Carly Rae Jepsen to be one of the strongest pop artists working today, and one who is severely underrated in the US. Emotion charted in the top 10 in Canada, Carly's home country, where it debuted at number 8. Still, Emotion sold more in the US, selling about 16,000 copies in its first week, compared to about 2,600 copies in Canada. Emotion also debuted at number 8 in Japan, but there its first week sales were about 12,000 copies. Carly actually released the album exclusively in Japan about 2 months before its global release. She did this because she's far more popular in Japan than in the US or Canada, and wanted it to be a sort of gift for her Japanese fans. While on the Gimme Love tour to promote Emotion, Carly explained her fan base in Japan formed before Call Me Maybe, and before many people outside of Canada even knew who she was. Carly told the Japan Times, "I have a great love and respect for my Japanese fans. Other than Canada, Japan was one of the first countries to really embrace me as an artist. When I released Tug of War, it was released exclusively in Canada, and then to my surprise and delight, also in Japan. So there have been about 11 different visits to Japan since my introduction, way back when I was 23 or 24. And it felt very fitting with the making of Emotion to pay credit to them and give thanks by letting them have the album first." I Really Like You was actually a top 5 single in Japan, compared to it peaking at number 39 in the United States, like I mentioned earlier. Cam Lindsay, who wrote the Japan Times article on Carly, claimed the 1980s dance pop on Emotion was better suited to resonate with Japan than anywhere else in the world. There wasn't an explanation as to why, but I would be curious to know. As for Carly herself, her feminine, upbeat, not too provocative image helps explain why she's popular in Japan. Allure said about this, "The country embraced her early on thanks to the winning harmony of her viral brand of carbonated bubblegum pop music and the cultural appeal of her adorable presentation." Carly said about her Japanese fans, "I think in Japan I've been overwhelmed by the attention to detail and above and beyond the shows of kindness I've received from the fans there. We'll arrive at the airport and there will be a group to meet us with handmade cards and letters or beautiful paintings. Last time I went, I was given this flower blossom that was in this casing and chopsticks with my name engraved on them. Just so many things that must have taken so much time. That really touches you and makes you feel so spoiled to get that kind of attention. It's always an absolute treat to come to Japan." Carly has been open about having made her peace with not being the biggest pop star in the world and not recapturing the success of Call Me Maybe, which admittedly is difficult to achieve even once. She actually said back in 2019 she's not looking for another Call Me Maybe and appreciates that in most countries she can walk around relatively unrecognized and therefore unbothered. Since Emotion, Carly has released 3 more studio albums, Dedicated, The Loneliest Time, and The Loveliest Time. Dedicated and The Loneliest Time both debuted within the top 20 on the Billboard 200, and interestingly, both charted higher here than in Japan. Carly's most recent album, The Loveliest Time, was released just a couple weeks ago. So far, the album is purely a digital release, with the Japanese edition of the album reported to come in September, and worldwide physical copies are said to come later this year. Though she's technically not a pop girl, I would be remiss to not mention the queen of rock and roll, the late great Tina Turner. While she did experience fame in the States, she always felt her level of reverence and admiration was greater in Europe. This was even true when still married to and performing with her first husband, Ike Turner. In the United States, their music was mostly relegated to R&B circuits, whereas in England, for example, their music was more commonly played on mainstream programming. In 1978, Tina divorced her abusive husband, Ike, and her career hit a wall, with Tina even having to take on cleaning jobs to support herself. She also sang in cabaret shows, but struggled to regain the success she'd had in the 60s and early 70s. After acquiring new management, Tina was able to start making a name for herself as a solo act and pushing her career forward rather than relying on her already successful songs. Everything changed when David Bowie went to go see Tina perform one night, mentioning that she was his favorite singer. Tina said some execs from Capitol Records joined him, and they were so impressed with her that she was offered a record deal. Tina's 5th album, Private Dancer, was recorded in London in 1984, and she considers it her first successful solo effort over there. The album contains What's Love Got to Do With It, which is one of her most popular songs, as well as the title of the 1993 film based on her life. Her cover of Al Green's Let's Stay Together, which is also on the album, was another big hit in the UK. Private Dancer was a renaissance in a sense for Tina, ushering in the second phase of her career, said to be one of the biggest career comebacks in music. In 1995, Tina made the permanent move to Switzerland with her then boyfriend, music exec Erwin Bach, She said in a 60 Minutes interview the following year that while she still felt American, owned property, and did business over there, she didn't see herself returning to live in her home country. In a 1997 Larry King interview, Tina said she felt more supported and successful in Europe than she ever had in America.
I have left America because my success was in another country, and my boyfriend was in another country. And yeah, private dancer was the beginning of my success in England. And basically Europe has been very supportive of my music.
More than America?
Yes. Yes, hugely.
Hugely more? Yes. You're a major star here. You're a superstar in America.
Not as big as Madonna. I'm as big as Madonna in Europe. I'm as big as, in some places, as the Rolling Stones.
Back in the 60s, Ike and Tina actually opened for the Rolling Stones, in part because their song River Deep Mountain High was so popular over in the UK. Tina also noted that in Europe, she was able to sustain her song's success longer, as she claimed nothing in America lasted very long. In 2013, Tina relinquished her U.S. citizenship after her marriage to Irwin. Though they moved houses within it, she and Irwin remained in the same suburb of Switzerland until her death this May at age 83. You know, as an American, and because 3 out of the 4 artists that I talked about today are Americans, this is more so just a reminder that America and English is just not the be-all, end-all. Yes, a lot of artists try to make it over here, and it does open you up to a new audience. And, you know, because English is such a universal language, it is the goal of a lot of artists. But like I said, the world is just bigger than America, and it is bigger than populations in countries where English is widely spoken. And you know, the awesome thing about the world being so big is that different countries have different cultures, and a lot of the times there are multiple cultures within a country. But I say all that to say that there are different things that are popular musically and, you know, aesthetically all across the globe. And in a past video, I actually did use the example of Tinashe and discuss some of the reasons that she herself is so popular in South Korea and actually is popular amongst a lot of the South Korean idols. Because even though Tinashe is American and she is biracial, she does still fit a lot of the South Korean beauty standards and a lot of the same standards that the idols try to uphold with their looks. And then on the performance side of things, Tinashe writes, she produces, and she dances. So her sort of holding equal weight on the dancing and the choreography as well as the singing, that's something that's very common in South Korea and just with the idol model over there in general, which explains why a lot of idols themselves respect her and want to emulate her, and why a lot of consumers over there enjoy her music. But you know, of course, over here in America, we love Tinashe as well. And then another example I can think of that I've talked about before is actually Maya, and how she's a lot more popular in Japan and actually got sort of a second life with her career in Japan. I talk about that in my Independent Artist Explain video, so check that out if you haven't, if you want to hear me discuss that. But yeah, like I said, I do find it really cool that artists are able to still triumph and make the music they want to make and have an audience out there, whether it's Americans, whether it's Westerners, whether it's not. And so if there are any other examples you can think of for this, please let me know. And the person doesn't have to be American born. They don't have to be Western. Just are they more popular, you know, in another country, or, you know, they intended to promote in this country. The reception wasn't as good as they thought, and they kind of pivoted to another country. I would also be interested to do the inverse. For example, I know a lot of K-pop, because y'all know I listen to a lot of K-pop. A lot of those idol groups, they're not as popular in South Korea, but then like in America, they're huge. So I think it's always interesting to wonder what's sort of at play here when an artist, like their domestic audience is not going as hard for them as their international audience. On a not music level, I do think it's also a reminder that, you know, sometimes you just got the wrong crowd. Like you might not be in the wrong thing, you just doing it in front of the wrong audience. And of course, as always, make sure to let me know your thoughts and your feelings down below. And like I said, if you can think of any other examples that weren't mentioned in this video, make sure you leave those down below also. And hopefully I will be able to look into those in the future. As always, thank you so very much for watching. Be sure to like, comment, and subscribe so that you can stick around for more. Also, make sure you follow me on Twitter. That way you can keep up with me there. And if you want to become a channel member, the link is in the video description. Again, thank you so very much for watching. I love you all so very much, and we'll see you so very soon. Bye-bye.